Dear students, as part of the paper on demographic data and population projections, in this module we will be focusing on United Nations population prospects of the world, regions and countries. It is expected that as a learning objective from this module, you will be exposed to know about the population situation in the world as a whole and in different regions of the world and also among various countries. The various issues related to population projections, how it led to understanding the development scenarios in most of these countries in the world. In the field of measuring population numbers and their basic characteristics, population projections are as important as the census. In most countries, a population projection is the first analytical activity conducted when the census data processing is completed. The reason is simple. A census tells us how many we were, but not how many we are. According to the results of the 2017 revision of the United Nations population prospects of the world, regions and countries, the world's population numbered nearly 7.6 billion as of mid 2017 as reflected in the table 1, implying that the world has added approximately 1 billion inhabitants over the last 12 years. 60% of the world's population live in Asia to the extent of 4.5 billion population, 17% in Africa of a population of 1.3 billion. In Europe, they constitute around 10% of a total of 742 millions, and in Latin America and the Caribbean 646 millions, which comes to 9% of the total world population, and the remaining 6% are residing in Northern America, constituting of 361 millions, and Oceania 41 million. And among the countries, China with a population of 1.4 billion, followed by India, population of 1.3 billion, remains the two most populous countries of the world and comprising of 19 and 18% of the global total population respectively. If we look at the table, it gives the picture about how the population in different regions, continent wise, the data reflects on the population projections as revealed by the calculations that are brought out by United Nations. At the global level, the numbers of men and women are roughly equal, with the male population being slightly larger than the female population. Currently, in 2017, there are 102 men for every 100 women. Thus, in a group of 1000 people selected at random from the world's population, we can expect male population constituting of 504 and female population of 496 on an average, as reflected in the figure 1. Children under 15 years of age represents roughly 1/4 of the world's inhabitants, that is 26% of the total world population, while older persons 60 and above accounts for just over 1/8, that is 13%. More than half, that is 61% of the total population, are adults in the age group between 15 to 59 years of age. If the total number of population were split into half according to the age distribution of the world's population, at the median age, one group would bring together all persons younger than 30 years of age, while the other would include everyone aged 30 years or older. The age pyramid indicates at the global level how the gender-wise population across different age groups looks, and it is depicted in the figure. Let us look at the projected growth of the global population. Today, the world's population continues to grow, albeit more slowly than in the recent past. 10 years ago, the global population was growing by 1.2% per year. Today, it is growing by 1.10% per year, yielding an additional 83 million people annually. The world's population is projected to increase by slightly more than 1 billion people over the next 13 years, reaching 8.6 billion by 2030, and it is further expected to increase to 9.8 billion by 2050 and as high as 11.2 billion population by 2100 as presented in the table. It shows the growth of population at a global level, how acceleration is taking place, and also how it varies across different regions in the world. There is inherent uncertainty in population projections which depend on assumptions about plausible future trends in specific demographic variables. The results presented above for future years are based on the medium variant projections of United Nations population prospects of the world, which assumes a decline of fertility for countries where large families are still prevalent, as well as a slight increase of fertility in several countries where women have fewer than 2 live births on an average over a lifetime. Survival rates are projected to increase in all countries as death rates continue to decline throughout the age group. That is where we call life expectancy at birth is steadily increasing across different countries. The uncertainty surrounding the projected trends in fertility and mortality has been assessed using statistical methods that generate statements about a range of plausible outcomes. For example, the analysis has concluded that with a certainty of 95%, the size of the global population will stand anywhere between 8.4 billion and 8.7 billion in 2030, between 9.4 billion and 10.2 billion by 2050, and as high as 9.6 billion by 2100. Thus, the size of the world's population is virtually certain to rise over the next few decades. Later in this century, although a continued increase of the global population is considered the most likely outcome, there is roughly a 27% chance that the world population could stabilize or even begin to fall sometime before 2100. Let us discuss about the diversity that exists in population growth rates across different regions of the world. More than half of the anticipated growth in the global population between now and by 2050, which is expected to occur mainly in Africa, as it is discussed and presented in figure. Of the additional 2.2 billion people who may be added between 2017 and 2050, nearly 1.3 billion population will be added in African continent. Next is about the population size of Asia. Asia is expected to be the second largest contributor to this future growth, adding just over 750 million people between 2017 and 2050. Africa and Asia will be followed by Latin America and Caribbean, Northern America and Oceania, where growth is projected to be much more modest. In the medium variant projection, Europe is the only region with a smaller population in 2050 than in 2017. Beyond 2050, Africa continent is going to be the main contributor to the global population growth, and the figure clearly reveals the extent of population, its growth across different regions over a period of time. Although the world's population is expected to continue growing until the end of the 21st century, in recent years the population of Africa has had the fastest growth among all regions, increasing at a rate of 2.6% annually during 2010 to 2015. However, this rate is beginning to fall and is projected to reach 1.8 in 2045 to 2050 and 0.66 in 2095 to 2100. The figure illustrates the changes in the population growth across different regions over a period of time. Rapid population growth in Africa is anticipated even assuming that there will be a substantial reduction of fertility levels in the near future. The medium variant projection assumes that fertility in Africa will fall around 4.7 births per woman in 2010 to 2015 to around 3.1 by 2045 to 2050, reaching a level slightly above 2.1 of TFR by 2095 to 2100. After 2050, it is expected that Africa will be the only region still experiencing a substantial population growth. As a result, Africa's share of global population, which is projected to grow from roughly 17% in 2017 to around 26% in 2050, and it could reach as high as 40% by 2100. At the same time, the share residing in Asia, the population projections clearly shows that 60%, that is expected to fall to around 54% in Asia in 2050 and 43% in 2100. It should be noted that the population of Africa will continue to increase in future decades even if the number of births per woman falls instantly to the level required for stabilization of population size in the long run, known also as the replacement level fertility. Population growth continues in that scenario thanks to the age structure of the population, which is currently quite youthful. The large numbers of children and youth in Africa today will reach adulthood in future decades. Because of their large numbers, their childbearing will contribute to a further increase of population, even assuming that they will bear fewer children on an average than their parents' generation. In all plausible scenarios of future trends, Africa will play a central role in shaping the size and distribution of world's population over the next few decades. Population growth remains especially high in a group of 47 countries which are designated by the United Nations as the least developed countries, LDCs, including 33 countries in Africa. Although the growth of least developed countries is projected to slow from its current annual rate of 2.4%, the population of this group is projected to nearly double in size from 1 billion inhabitants in 2017 to 1.9 billion by 2050 and to increase further to 3.2 billion in 2100. Between 2017 and 2100, the population of 33 countries, most of them being least developed countries, they have a high probability of at least tripling in size. Among them, the populations of Angola, Burundi, Niger, Somalia, the United Republic of Tanzania and Zambia are projected to be at least 5 times as large in 2100 as they are today. The concentration of population growth in the poorest countries will make it harder for those governments to eradicate poverty, reduce inequality, combat hunger and malnutrition, expand and update education and health systems, improve the provision of basic services and ensure that no one is left behind. Let us discuss about the continued low fertility level which is leading to shrinking population in some countries. In sharp contrast, the populations of another 51 countries or areas of the world are expected to decrease between 2017 and 2050. Several countries are expected to see their populations decline by more than 15% by 2050, including countries like Bulgaria, Croatia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Republic of Moldova, Romania, Serbia, Ukraine and the United States Virgin Islands. Fertility in all European countries is now below the level of replacement that is required for replacement of the population in the long run, that is around 2.1 births per woman on an average, and in most cases it has been below the replacement level for several decades. Fertility for Europe as a whole is projected to increase from 1.6 births per woman in 2010-2015 to nearly 1.8 in 2045 to 2050. Such an increase, however, will not prevent a likely contraction in the size of the total population. What about the other cases where the increase in global population can be attributed to some of the small countries? Much of the overall increase in population between now and 2050 is projected to occur either in high fertility countries, that is mostly in Africa, or in countries with large populations. From 2017 to 2050, it is expected that half of the world's population growth will be concentrated in just 9 countries such as India, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Pakistan, Ethiopia, the United Republic of Tanzania, the United States of America, Uganda and Indonesia. They are ordered by their expected contribution to total growth. The new projections include some notable findings at the country level. For example, in roughly 7 years, the population of India is expected to surpass that of China. Currently, the population of China is approximately 1.41 billion population compared to 1.34 billion in India. By 2024, both countries are expected to have roughly 1.44 billion population each. Thereafter, India's population is projected to continue to grow for several decades to around 1.5 billion in 2030 and approaching 1.66 billion by 2050, while the population of China is expected to remain stable until the 2030, after which it may begin a slow decline. Among the 10 largest countries of the world, one is in Africa, that is Nigeria. 5 areas are in Asia, that are Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia and Pakistan. 2 are in Latin America, that is Brazil and Mexico. 1 is in Northern America, that is United States of America, and 1 is in Europe, Russian Federation. Future population growth is highly dependent on the path that future fertility will take. That is, let us explain in this. The population trends projected as part of the medium variant are an outcome of the substantial projected declines in fertility. According to the median variant of the 2017 revision, global fertility is projected to fall just over 2.5 births per woman in 2010 to 2015 to around 2.4 births in 2025 to 2030 and 2.0 births in 2095 to 2100. Fertility declines that are slower than projected would result in higher population totals in all subsequent time periods. The potential effect on the global population of a slower decline in fertility is illustrated by the upper bound of the prediction interval as reflected in the figure 2. What about large variations in fertility levels across different countries and regions? In recent decades, many countries have experienced major reductions in the average number of births per woman, while in 75 to 1980, close to a quarter of women's world's population lived in countries where fertility was above 5 births per woman. In 2010 to 2015, only 8% of the world's population lived in countries with fertility in this range. The largest are Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the United Republic of Tanzania, Uganda and Afghanistan. In 2045 to 2050, it is expected that no country will experience a fertility level greater than 5 births per woman. In 2010 to 2015, around 46% of the world population lived in intermediate fertility countries where women have on an average between 2.1 and 5 births over a lifetime. Intermediate fertility countries are found in many regions, with the largest being India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Mexico and the Philippines. In 2045 to 2050, it is expected that slightly less than a third of the world's population will live in countries with fertility in this range, and it is very clearly depicted in the figure. Increasing longevity around the world, the progress against major challenges. The 2017 revision confirms that significant gains in life expectancy have been achieved in recent years. Globally, life expectancy at birth rose by 3.6 years between 2000 to 2005 and 2010 to 2015, or from 67.2 years to 70.8 years. All regions shared in the rise of life expectancy over this period, but the greatest gain were in Africa, where life expectancy rose by 6.6 years between these two periods, after rising by less than 2 years over the previous decade. Life expectancy in Africa in 2010 to 2015 stood at 60.2 years compared to 71.8 years in Asia, 74.6 in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 77.2 years in Europe, 77.9 years in Oceania and 79.2 years in Northern America, as these figures clearly presented in the figure. The under 5 mortality rate, equal to the probability of dying between birth and a child's 5th birthday, is an important indicator of development and children's well-being. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development calls for ending preventable deaths of newborns and of children under 5 years of age, with all countries aiming to reduce under 5 mortality to not more than 25 deaths per 1000 live births by 2030. Globally, deaths among children under age 5 fell from an estimated 70 per 1000 live births in 2000 to 2005 to 48 per 1000 in 2010 to 2015. Absolute declines were especially large in sub-Saharan Africa, from 141 to 95 per 1000, and in the least developed countries from 123 to 83 per 1000. Globally, life expectancy at birth is projected to rise from 71 years in 2010 to 2015 to 77 years in 2045 to 2050. Africa is projected to gain nearly 11 years of life expectancy by mid-century, reaching 71 years by 2045 to 2050. Such increases are contingent on further reductions in HIV or AIDS and combating successfully other infectious as well as non-communicable diseases. In conclusion, we can say that according to the results of 2017 revision, the world's population reached nearly 70.6 billion in mid-2017. The world has added 1 billion people since 2005 and 2 billion since 1993. In 2017, an estimated 50.4% of the world's population were males and 49.6% females. In 2017, 9% of the global population was under age 5, 26% was under age 15, 13% are elderly of 60 and above, and 2% were very old above 80 years. Current estimates indicate that roughly 83 million people are being added to the world's population every year. Even assuming that fertility levels will continue to decline, the global population is expected to reach 8.6 billion in 2030, 9.8 billion in 2050 and 11.2 billion in 2100. According to medium variant projection, the magnitude of population growth of decline attributable to this momentum can be found by projecting the population forward, assuming that mortality remains constant, fertility instantly reaches the replacement level, and the population is close to migration. To illustrate the importance of population momentum, a new momentum variant was included in the projections of the 2017 revision. In recent years, fertility has declined in virtually all regions of the world. In Africa, where fertility levels are the highest of any region, total fertility rate has fallen from 5.1 births per woman in 2000 to 2005 to 4.7 in 2010 to 2015. Over the same period, fertility levels also fell in Asia from 2.4 to 2.2, Latin America and Caribbean from 2.5 to 2.1, and Northern America from 2.00 to 1.85. A reduction in fertility level results not only in slower pace of population growth, but also in a more elderly population. For the population of the world and of many countries and regions, as the population growth rate has fallen over time, the proportion of elderly has increased, while that of younger population started declining. Life expectancy at birth has increased significantly in the least developed countries in recent years. The gain in life expectancy made by these countries extended around 6 years during 2000 to 2005 and 2010 to 2015, and roughly double the increase that is achieved by the rest of the world. Nonetheless, the least developed countries still lag behind other developing countries, where the average life expectancy was 70 years in 2010 to 2000. The gap life expectancy at birth between the least developed countries and other developed countries narrowed from 11 years in 2000 to 2005 to 8 years in 2010 to 2015. Although differences in life expectancy across regions and income groups are projected to persist in future years, such differences are expected to diminish significantly by 2045 to 2050.